Okay, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of the Wimbledon Community Forum. So everybody's very welcome. Thank you very much for being here. And as I always say, this is your meeting. It's disappointing we continue to be on Zoom, and it's not nearly as productive as all being able to be together. So I'm sorry that that is continuing. And of course, the news this week suggests further challenges. But as I say each time, this is the meeting for you as residents to hold us as elected representatives to account, to ask us questions, to make comments, to suggest your ideas, and hopefully each meeting to hear of some ideas, policies, etc., that are going on within the borough. So we have a number of councillors here today, and in no particular order only than the order on my screen. We have Councillor Paul Kohler from Trinity Ward, Councillor Eleanor Stringer from Abbey Ward, Councillor Ed Gretton from Wimbledon Park, Councillor David Williams from Hillside, Councillor Hayley Omrod from Trinity, and I don't see any other councillors at the moment, but some may join during the evening. Chris, we have had some apologies. Are you able just to run through those quickly?
Yeah, for Councillor Simon McGrath, Anthony Fairclough. Hayley did apologise too, but is here, so obviously managed to make it after all.
Great, thanks, Chris. So this evening we have our annual report from our member of the London Assembly, Leonie Cooper, who I now can't see on my screen, but I'm hoping that Leonie is still with us. Yes, I can now, good. So Leonie is the member of the London Assembly for Merton and Wandsworth, and she is joining us, as she has before, to present her report on the activities of the Assembly and the Mayor, and what's in her inbox, and what is relevant to our borough. So Leonie, you're very welcome, and over to you.
Hi, and I hope everyone can hear me. I've got a slightly unstable connection, for which apologies. I'm actually joining through my phone. I think there's probably 2 or 3 main things that I want to touch on. I won't do terms of my ag has been the issue about Wimbledon Park and the application to change the park considerably with the concept of building and the 8,000-seater stadium and all the practice courts. So obviously, because that's a major planning issue,
Leonie, your connection's not good, as you said. I wonder if you maybe turn your video off, if you can hear us.
Involved in the planning consent as well as the mayor. Can you hear me? Hello.
Well, Leonie, it's not a good line, as you said. I wonder if you were to turn your camera off, it may be that you have a better connection.
Okay, so I can try that. Hang on. So how's that? Is that better without
the moment?
Camera?
That's good. Yeah, at the moment. No.
Hello.
Okay, we can hear you. We can hear you.
I was trying to talk about the application for the 8,000-seater stadium, which I've been in correspondence with lots of people about, and I've put down a question to the mayor, and I've started asking a lot of questions at City Hall that specific people have asked me to put in. Obviously, I was aware this matter, and that's something that I'm going to be trying to be all over as much as possible over the next few weeks. I think the other really big thing, there's 2 other things I just want to briefly touch on. One is the consultation the Metropolitan Police have just started on their action plan that relates to how they deal with violence against women and girls. submit their comments. I'm very happy to circulate that. Perhaps if I send it to Chris, he can send it out with the follow-up from this meeting. But I think that's a really important document. It's it suddenly hit the headlines, I think, as everybody knows, because of the appalling situation with Sarah Everard and Sabina Nessa, and then also the police response to the bodies of Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman around. So I think there's been rightfully a lot of interest and concern. And I think there's a lot of issues relating to police attitudes that keep coming up. So there's a big job of work. There's 2 investigations into the police looking at their sort of internal practices, one being led by Louise putting forward her comments. And then the other really big thing that will affect many of us, obviously we've had the launch of the ULEZ, so I'm very happy to take any comments on that, but we're moving up to the 11th of December, and we're still no further forward in terms of getting a multi-year deal for transport for London, which we really do need. These 6-month deals really good. It means that you can't raise finance to invest in some of the lines that do need upgrading and investment. And none of the other train operating countries, private or public around the country, had this kind of protracted negotiation with government. And I think, we should just agree, there's almost 9 million people that live in London. As you were saying just at the beginning, Chair, there's bad news on the COVID front again. So some people will be becoming somewhat hesitant to use public transport again. So the assistance that's sought, it's gone to every other part of the country. We pay in vehicle excise duty 500 million a year, and we haven't had anything back. Very, very difficult at the moment. So I'm very happy to take questions on any of those areas. I think those are probably the most important things that are going on at the moment. I'm sort of, trying to hone in on what I think is the important things, but happy to take questions on anything else.
So Leonie, thank you very much for that. Thank you for presenting your report. The line was not clear at all, I'm afraid, which we're all used to, of course, with so many meetings now being online. I'm happy to try anybody who wants to ask a question or make a comment to Leonie. Please feel free to raise your hand, and when Chris or I see you, then go ahead. If you would rather put it in the chat, then I will see it there. So are there any questions for Leonie Cooper, our Assembly member, or comments or ideas you want to share? Paul.
Sorry, Leonie, could you just reprise your ALTC comments? Because every time you got to something, we lost you at the tantalising bits.
So I'm so sorry. Well, obviously, it's been a massive issue that both people on the sort of Wandsworth side and the Merton side of the border across the constituency have been what they're proposing and why.
Missed that again.
Yes,
and last 30 seconds.
I mean, I'm really sorry. This is the worst connection I've had actually of trying to get into one of these meetings, and I can only apologise for that. I was just saying I met with the All England Club, I've met with the Southfields Grid Residents Association, the Wimbledon Society, also the Friends of Wimbledon Park. To me, and so I've been picking things up in questions with the mayor and trying to try and make sure that local people's views are very much heard on this matter, because it's going to be a huge change. And I think we need to make sure that if there is going to be the kind of change that's being proposed, whether it's right, whether it's something that we should be supporting, really important for me to be involved in. I hope you heard most of that, Paul.
Half of it, but I got some of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Any other questions or comments or ideas to share with Leonie? Okay. Leonie, it's not a reflection on you, I assure you. Unfortunately, one of the issues we're going to discuss in a minute, and you're welcome to stay, but we appreciate you're very busy, is how we continue to operate this forum in the current environment. So it is no reflection on you, but I'm afraid we have fewer residents than when you've been able to join us in person. Leonie, unless there's anything else you want to say, we're very grateful to you for joining us this evening and for presenting your annual report of your work at the Assembly. As I said, you're very welcome to stay, but we appreciate you're very busy. Unless you have any
I can
closing
certainly put
comments
something
you
in
want to
writing if. No, I was just going to say, do you want me to circulate my report in writing? And I agree with you. I have noticed there's less people on the call than when we met in person in the Wimbledon Library. So the sooner we can go back to in person, the better.
I agree. And if you are able to do that, that would be really helpful, because Chris can then publish it on the website, and obviously that allows residents to read your report directly. So that would be really helpful.
So deplorable this evening.
Okay, thank you, Leonie. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. So, if we move on,
thank you.
Thank you, Leonie. So we have a short report now from Chris, from Chris Witherington, who's going to give us an update on the recent consultation process that the council have undertaken. So, Chris, over to you, and thank you.
Thanks, James. So yes, I won't run through all of these slides in detail, but I'll just give you the general gist. Apologies for those who've sat through this presentation a few times, but we're trying to get the word out. So I think better to repeat than not to say it at all. So for those who remember this, over the course of the spring and the summer, we carried out quite a large-scale exercise to try and get a sense of what residents wanted from a long-term vision for the borough, what impact the pandemic had, what was sort of great about working in the borough. We used a sort of mixed approach. We did our resident survey. Normally we do that face-to-face, but we had to do it by telephone because of the pandemic. We also built a special open access engagement site. So I guess that was doing the job of kind of meeting in libraries and church halls and other places to have that kind of discussion. It'll allow people to comment on other people's posts and indicate whether they like them or not. Because we knew that those routes would not necessarily reach all parts of the community, we worked with 13 local community organisations to target other parts of our community, those that are usually seldom heard. So ethnic minority communities, disabled people, older people, younger people as well, and in certain parts of the borough as well where we spotted there was sort of lower response rate. We're also able to recruit some residents, and thanks to those who took part from the survey, to take part in a couple of deliberative workshops where we went through a few of the issues in real detail, so we can sort of get behind the headline numbers. So those are the groups we worked with, but I'll skip through that. The traverser we worked with went through all of the data that we got from all of the different sources and drew together the kind of main headline themes. And I'll go into those in a bit more detail, but they grouped things into the assets that people saw that we had as a borough, some of the frustrations they've been experiencing, what the impact of COVID had been on their lives, and what they would like to see in the future. Around the assets, so this is quite wordy, but it'll go out with the notes to have a read in a bit more detail, but I'll just pick out the highlights. Green spaces did really well, as it often has done over the years with some of our surveys. Our parks and open spaces are really well regarded and seen as a real benefit, I think, particularly during the pandemic, because people were at home a lot more and therefore using their local resources and their local green spaces a lot more. And so those came out. something that we hadn't seen necessarily before, but the sense of community spirit that came out during the pandemic was really highlighted by a lot of people at a very local level in terms of, just neighbours supporting each other, but also the more structured stuff through things like the Don's Local Action Group and the food banks and all the other activities that were taking place to support communities. And that was seen as really important. Litter, which is an issue that's come up at this forum frequently, as has traffic and congestion, was cited as particular issues. There were some variations in geography. So generally in the west of the borough, traffic came up as a bigger issue than in the east, whereas in the east of the borough, safety and antisocial behaviour issues often scored higher. We found, particularly with the telephone survey, which took place within a month of the Sarah Everard murder that Leonie referenced, the concern about safety at night, particularly amongst women, had increased enormously. So where we generally scored quite well as a safe borough, that had changed quite significantly. During the pandemic, there were a few big issues. I think these will probably come as things that most of us would have experienced. Isolation, and that was particularly the case for those focus groups that we spoke with perhaps those more vulnerable within our community, disabled people and others, who found their normal routines heavily disrupted. There's an additional survey going on with children and young people, and their concerns around their education and their future job prospects really came out very heavily in the survey work. And a desire to see the local community involved in setting the tone for the future, setting the priorities for what's going to happen in the future. And in terms of those priorities, the two big things that came out were around our high streets. I think there's acknowledgement that where people were home locally more often during the pandemic, they were using those high streets a lot more, and they want to see something different there. So we spoke to residents about what they want from the high streets, and it was a sense of it being a community hub, a destination, place to go. So it wasn't just about what shops there are, but it was about it being a welcome and accessible space and an open space and a space where you could meet other people and there's stuff to do, there's things going on, that there's a reason for going there. There are trade-offs, and difficult one to get across was people saying, well, they want to be able to park in their local high streets, but they also want it traffic free. Well, you can't do both very easily. So I think the trade-off is if it's traffic free and there's stuff going on, people would better leave their cars at home, because it's less about doing the weekly shop. It's more about going to enjoy the experience. And it's a sense of pride and identity in those high streets as well. Making more of those green assets, those local spaces that people really appreciated and enjoyed. That there's a recognition that they need to attract income through activity, through renting out for things, but getting the balance right between spaces that are quiet and environmentally welcoming and biodiverse, spaces that have got sporting activities and for around health and fitness, and spaces that have got events. And I think that will be part of the future strategy, is looking at which parks are most appropriate for which of those activities. So we also looked at other aspects as well as what's taken place through the engagement work. Some statistics that we know that there was differential impacts both in terms of the pandemic and in terms of the impact on people's incomes across different parts of the borough, different wards. There was a huge amount of pressure on low-income households and a huge impact on our local businesses and high streets. So there are huge challenges coming up. We've seen those increasing costs around fuel and energy prices and food, often related to each other, those sort of cost of living increases. Local businesses are still struggling to get up and running. Large sectors of the economy still haven't really got up to speed. And of course, as we've been reading this week, there's a lot of big events that will be coming up to Christmas are probably not going to happen. People will decide for themselves not to have those Christmas parties and the knock-on impact that will have. The health inequalities which we've had in the borough for many years have been exacerbated by COVID, and that's an issue that where progress might have been made, but we're going to have to readdress that. And there's been a huge impact on children's well-being in particular, and children's mental health was cited by a lot of young people who participated in the work that's being done. But there are opportunities, particularly coming out of that sense of community spirit and people feeling they want to be involved and they want to participate. And the way that the voluntary sector in particular rallied round and collaborated in a way that we hadn't seen before. So there are ways of making the most of that. So where we are at the moment is there are some emerging priorities coming out of your Merton, and this is what we're working towards at the moment. So first one is around education and skills, then around the high streets issue and the community and economy, making that safe and attractive, support for those in care who have additional needs, a clean and environmentally sustainable borough, relating back to our climate emergency declaration, and then those kind of reducing some of those inequalities as well. So the work that's taking place at the moment is to develop an ambition, a set of actions that will sit under those priorities. That's being done both internally within the council, but also with our partners. There was a recent partnership event to go through this. The plan is to present that action plan to Cabinet and Council in the new year. And then that drives our plans going forward in terms of what we're going to be spending our money on and what we be prioritising. So happy to take any questions, James.
Chris, thank you for that. Any questions or comments for Chris from residents? Chris, thank you. Either in the group chat or anybody who wants to just pitch in, as it's not a huge crowd tonight. Okay, thank you. So is there anything, we now have our soapbox section, but is there anything that anybody, residents first, is there anything that anybody wants to raise? Again, questions, comments or ideas? Is there any councillor who wants to raise a non-party matter? David?
Residents may wish to know that there is a project, embryonic at this stage, that officers are working on with the residents' associations associated with Wimbledon Hill Road to improve the general view of Wimbledon Hill Road and the greenery. It's such a treasure, but it has become a bit of a mess over a period of time. And the intent here, using some of the funds that are available to ward councillors and also some money from developments and even from the All England, will be to make improvements that should be visible by the spring of next year. I can't say more than that at the moment because there isn't a detailed plan, but if people have got ideas that they want to contribute to what they'd like to see on Wimbledon Hill Road, then please do let us know. From an officer point of view, it's being run by Paul McGarry, the head of Future Merton.
David, thank you. Any final call for residents? Anybody wishing to say anything? Any other? David Hall. David, I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Thank you very much. For those who don't know me, I'm David Hall. I'm Chair of Trustees at Wimbledon Community Association, and we run the website Wimblecom. I've come on this forum several times before. It's been celebrating our 75th anniversary this year, and for those who visit the site will see that we've been celebrating that by publishing positive stories about what's going on at the moment and about the history of WCA going back to 1946. We're still putting stories together, so we have extended it into the new year. And so look out for stories on there. And if anyone wants to contribute any stories, and this goes as much to councillors as to residents as well, anybody in the community across the whole of Merton who wants to contribute to that, would be happily to talk to them. And so I'll put the link to that through you, Chris, if you like, through the minutes. Nothing more to say.
David, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Congratulations on your birthday. So thank you very much. Okay, there's something I want to talk about, unless there's any other final comments, residents or councillors. Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the community forums. This evening, we've seen the great strength of the forum and also the weaknesses that we're lumbered with at the moment. To have a member of the Assembly come and give their report, to have so many councillors here, to have 3 political parties represented, to have the administration represented in the form of the deputy leader, and to hear about community events as David Hall and David Williams has shared with us. Those are all the good things about the community forum. And the reason I've been so keen to carry on in my role here is because I believe, as I have bored you all with many times over 8 years now, nearly 8 years, I think the opportunity for residents to be directly involved in your own government, the opportunity to hold your representatives to account, the opportunity to contribute ideas and solutions and to ask questions, I really believe in that, a form of direct democracy, and I'm a great believer in it. So tonight and on other occasions, we've seen the great strengths of the forum. And for those of you, both councillors and residents who are here tonight and those who usually attend but can't be here tonight, I'm very grateful to you for the support that you show. But we are struggling at the moment. So now I move to the not so good. And it is 99% of it is COVID, and it's not the fault of the presenters. Tonight we've had 2 presenters drop out, which is incredibly disappointing, and I'm not very happy about that, if I'm honest, but 2 presenters have dropped out this evening, which is a great shame. But we are hampered by COVID. The numbers have dropped off. It is disappointing. There have been times when we've had 30 plus people in the room, and we've actually adopted motions which have then gone to council, and cabinet have engaged with those motions. So we've gone from a high to where we are today. I think all I wanted to say for tonight is that Chris has broached with me today the possibility of having a review, which I think is a process that Chris, who's done such great work for the forum, has started. And any ideas that any of you have, please do feed them to myself or to Chris, because what we do want to do is try to make sure that going forward, the concept of residents being directly involved in your local government continues, and we need to always be looking at new and fresh ways of doing that. So this is not, there's no hidden message in what I'm saying. It is just recognizing that we're struggling. We've been going not even half an hour tonight, and we're about to say goodnight to each other, and it is a shame. But any ideas or thoughts you have on how we refresh and try to keep these community forums relevant, particularly in these tough times. And this week, it looks as though we're going to be carrying on Zoom, at least for the foreseeable future. Please do feed that back, because it is important. And I'm grateful to you all for being here. And I'm grateful to Chris for sort of kicking off the discussion of how do we keep the community forums important. I mean, given we're in such good time, if anybody has any particular comments to make, then please feel free before we say goodnight. Ed?
Yeah, just a really quick one, Jay. Thank you very much for chairing the meeting. I don't know if the forum's interested, but it might be good to hear from some of the individual wards sometimes. So maybe one or two of the wards could say a little bit of update about what's going on in their ward. A couple of things like, for example, Wimbledon Park. We've got the Haydens Road regeneration, which the councillors have put together recently, and it's just kicking off. Because if you come down Haydens Road, you'll see all that work on the brickwork of the shop front starting, which will go on now for several months after the funding bid we put together. And also the new pocket park that's been sort of planted with trees and everything, and all the new railings. So things like that, I think, may be of interest to residents. I don't know what the forum thinks about sometimes having a bit of an update from some of the things that are going on in individual wards like Wimbledon Park, for example.
Ed, I think that's a really good idea, and I think, but what we need to do is do that in such a way that it remains residents holding councillors to account, and rather than councillors just sort of informing residents. But definitely, I think the idea of a ward focus every now and then is a good one. We just need to find out how to do that. Any other? I'm not necessarily expecting anything tonight. I just wanted to share, rather than break off after half an hour and everybody to think, oh dear, how disappointing. I just wanted to share some of my thoughts. But does anybody else want to contribute?
Just a bit of clarification. Chris, is this the same review that Louise Round was talking about when we had the constitutional sort of review earlier this year?
It's sort of parallel but separate. So there's a broader review of community engagement, and the forum was a part of that. So we've done a review of communications, and next bit of that is going to be around consultation and engagement. Okay,
because I know, James, this is not a criticism of you at all, but a high point of 30 is not a community bursting at the seams to come into these fora. There's more we need to do, and I know David and I were talking at the Constitution review about that. We've not cracked it. There must be a way of making these things seem more effective for residents. And I think the key is giving them more input into the council meeting via putting forward motions and realising what they can do. There's lots of power in these forums, but they're not really exploited at the moment by residents. I don't think it requires us telling them about our wards particularly. I think it should be them telling us what they want.
Paul, I think that's right. It's how to widen, and please, any residents here, Mike, I think I saw you a minute ago indicating you might want to speak. Great. Yeah, I'll come to you in 1 second. Paul, you're right. And in fact, when I think it was David Williams who tipped me off that forums could adopt motions, and until that point, nobody seemed to even know that it could happen. And we have had some motions. And you're right, 30, I was reluctant to go higher in case I was wrong. But yeah, 30, 35, you're right. And it's the same, and many of you, or some of you are here tonight, it's the same people supporting time after time. So Paul, it's not even as if it's 30 different people each time. It tends to be the same people supporting. And what could be more important than getting involved in running your community? So I do agree with you that part of this revamp needs to look at what is the best way to get people involved in their own local government. And there are different ways to do it. I don't want to sound too gloomy tonight. There are different ways to do it. But what you've said, I agree with. Mike. Hi.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Very simply, and I personally feel that this forum is a very, very important sort of tool. Is it possible to ask whether any documentation or notice that comes out from Merton, whether it be COVID or what have you, has the date of these forums included on it, whatever it might be, so people can't necessarily claim ignorance? I mean, you do have to search around at times a little for the dates, and I wonder whether it would just sort of hit people between the eyes that it's a fact of life that this information is coming, and these are the dates where you can make your opinion or comments heard.
Well, Mike, I think that's an excellent idea, which Chris hopefully can take back. And as I said earlier, we've got Eleanor Stringer, the deputy leader, here as well. So, Mike, that's a brilliant idea. What we did in my group is I ask for every communication we send out to have the community forum on it for the Wimbledon area, and I think at the very least other groups could do that, and maybe we can do something at the council too. Perhaps Chris, we can leave that with you, but I think that's a good idea. So Mike, thanks so much for that. Any other questions or comments this evening? I'm grateful for people who have spoken. I hadn't necessarily expected it. David.
I was just going to say, in connection with the last point, the way I get this information is through a simple email. So I think I've been on Chris's mailing list for some time now, possibly even dates back before I got involved with Wimbledon. I don't know what your mailing list is, how long it is, Chris, but I mean, I know people are on lots of mailing lists these days, and it's very easy to unsubscribe on those sometimes. But personally, I think if some of particularly the residents groups have people in charge of those mailing lists, make sure that they're on that and then communicate it out to their residents. So it's a filter system, not just directly from the council every time.
David, thanks for that. When I first became chair, which, as I said earlier, is actually nearly 8 years ago now, Chris and I did have a push, and we made sure that the notices were always in the libraries, on the community notice boards, etc. I think, unfortunately, of course, COVID has disrupted much of that. And I noticed there's a notice board I regularly pass, which almost always used to have the community forum on it, and now almost always doesn't. So I think you're right, David. I think we need to do more to disseminate the news, which we had a big push on a few years ago. But again, that can be part of the thinking. Anything? Actually, this has been a useful part of the evening to get some input. But any other questions or comments before we close? I'm grateful to everybody for being here this evening. Chris will have noted all the comments that have been made at the end of the meeting. So thank you for that. And hopefully onwards and upwards. Mike, are you indicating again? Do you want to speak again?
Very
go
simply,
ahead.
Very simply.
There's plenty of time, so go ahead.
Is there any idea at all when the next forum will be?
Do we have
any clue?
We probably do have that, Chris. Do we? Is that in front of you?
Yes, it's on Wednesday, the 23rd of March.
Excellent. Thanks very much. That's all I need to know. That's fine.
I mean, there is a chance that will be face to face. I mean, that's quite a gap now from the Christmas one to the spring, or to the, if it is a spring one. So there is a chance that will be face to face, and I think that's our biggest failing at the moment: the inability to get together. That's what's seen the numbers peel off. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for your time. Have a good rest of your evening, and see you all in March.